Thank you for the opportunity to introduce the Pathways to Climate Change Resilience Guidebook for Canadian forest-based communities. This is a project of the Canadian Model Forest Network. It is currently being tested by model forests in Canada and Sweden, and it will be finalized in 2014. First, what is a climate resilient community? It is a community that continually takes proactive steps to prepare for expected climate change impacts and opportunities. It doesn't put its head in the sand and hope that the past will be the future. But a climate resilient community is not climate proof. How the climate will change in the future and how it will impact communities cannot be fully known. There will be surprises, so a resilient community expects surprises and is as prepared as possible. The Climate Resilience Trail Map for rural forest-based communities is based on research completed by the Canadian Forestry Service, a review of the global literature about climate change resilience in rural communities, and participation in several community projects in Canada. It weaves together approaches from climate science, community development, forest management, and extension. It's a trail that communities will follow many times as the climate changes, and we learn how to become more and more resilient. The destinations along the trail are 1. Get prepared, 2. Learn about climate change, 3. Chart and scan impacts and opportunities, 4. Decide priorities, 5. Plan and take action, 6. Watch, learn, and refine. The first step is to get prepared. The guidebook recommends it is best to start small with conversations with influential individuals to find out their views about climate change. This is still a controversial topic that some people disagree about. It's essential to find champions, respected individuals who are willing and able to lead the discussion about climate resilience. Then it is important to create a strong team with people who are respected and actively involved in community decisions. Champions and the team must understand and communicate that climate change is more than an environmental issue. It has the potential to impact almost everyone in all aspects of life in rural forest-based communities. The guidebook identifies common challenges and barriers at this stage and lists strategies other communities have used successfully. The second step is to learn about climate change. Rather than jumping right into the climate science, the guidebook recommends inviting community members to share their observations about how the local climate and environment has changed in the past 30 or so years. Include community members who spend a lot of time outdoors, like hunters, gardeners, and forest workers, and preferably elders who can describe changes over many decades. A climate scientist then can tell you how the climate has changed over the past 30 or more years based on scientific measurements. You can then try to link your community's observations to the measured climate changes. In most cases, there is a direct relationship. In this way, your community can learn how a small change in climate, such as a 1 to 2 degree increase in summer temperatures, can result in a very real change in the environment and community life, for example, by causing a longer wildfire season with more fires that become large and destructive. Then the climate scientists can tell you about the projected future climate conditions for each season. By comparing these expected changes to what has already happened, community members will begin to understand how the changing climate might affect their lives. The third step is to answer the question, how might climate change create impacts and opportunities in your community? This is best done by charting the relationships between a change in climate to impacts on the physical environment and ecosystems, then to the community, in terms of safety, infrastructure, economy, and quality of life. This should be done in a hands-on way by community members so they can think through the linkages from climate to community. As the potential and impacts and opportunities from climate change are not obvious, it's wise to have the community's work reviewed by specialists in community climate change resilience in forest settings. The fourth step is to answer the question, which climate impacts and opportunities should the community focus on first? For most communities, there are many potential impacts and some opportunities. Most rural communities do not have the resources to take action on all of these topics at once, so it's important to prioritize which to address first. There are many different ways to do this, from very simple thin slice approaches to very detailed evaluations. Each community will need to decide which approach will work best for them. The guidebook describes these approaches and provides case study examples of each. For most rural communities, the thin slice assessment has been most effective at this initial stage in the journey. At the end of this step, your community will have identified a handful of priority impacts and opportunities that you can focus on. In step 5, plan and take action, your community decides on the best ways to adapt to the high priority impacts and opportunities. This can be done by including climate change into ongoing planning processes or by making decisions for each priority independently. For example, the table in this slide shows potential actions to adapt to impacts on roads and transportations that are taken from the action checklist in the guidebook. As well, your community should commit to mainstream, which means to include climate change information in all future community decisions. These decisions are then acted on or implemented, and your community becomes more climate resilient based on the information that is currently available. But there is one more destination along the trail, number 6, watch, learn, and refine. As we are at the beginning of this climate change journey, communities will need to keep watching for changes in the local climate and ecosystems, often through strengthened environmental monitoring, perhaps where citizen scientists from your community can gather local data using well-established protocols and databases. They will need to keep learning by gathering new information about climate change, impacts, opportunities, and adaptations. By sharing this new information with the community, you can keep climate change on the community radar so it doesn't get lost amongst more short-term issues. And your community will need to refine decisions by revisiting priorities and actions regularly with new information and learning. To be a climate-resilient community, you need to continually be proactive. Thank you for your interest in the guidebook and this community resilience trail. We welcome comments and feedback on the draft, which is available from the Canadian Model Forest Network website at www.modelforest.net.